welcome back to Are You Gonna Eat That? Before we start, I always start off with a disclaimer. So this podcast will touch on sensitive subjects such as body image, mental health, and eating disorders. So if you or anyone you know is in crisis, please contact 000, or you can visit Butterfly Foundations for resources with dealing with body image and eating disorders. And personally, like I've said before in all my other podcasts, is that I love using Butterfly Foundation's resources. It's helped me a lot with this podcast and figuring out what I want to talk about, essentially. But what's really great is that we have NUTRISHAZ with us here, and she's a nutritionist, and I'm very, very, very proud and glad to have her onto this podcast. So, hey Shaz, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and who you are?
Hello, everyone listening or watching. My name is Shaz, full name Sharyne. I have an online business called NutriShaz Nutrition Coaching. So just by the title itself, I am a nutrition coach. I am a degree qualified nutritionist and also an accredited sports nutritionist. So I primarily work with athletes from different backgrounds in sports. So whether you're a weightlifter, bodybuilder, powerlifter, or you're part of like a team sport, I work with individuals from those areas. And I've been running my business for almost 2 to 3 years now. And it's been going great. Yeah.
That's so good. So I guess a question I like to ask all my guests is, why do you assume I've brought you on here?
Mhm.
And I guess, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. I guess just straight off the bat, just some insight from someone in the nutrition field, as someone who has worked with clients, not necessarily with those that have a history of any form of eating disorders or anything like that. It's great to get some kind of insight from someone who has been working with people within the nutrition field or the industry. And I think regardless, even though I am niched into sports nutrition, like these issues that obviously you've been talking about or bring light to, it also happens with even individuals at like the high level athlete state. So it's not just with your everyday athletes or everyday individuals or high level athletes, it's actually with everyone. So I think like this provides another perspective to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I've been following your account for a while now, and I've been really interested, and I'm like, wow, actually, there's actually a lot of things I can do for myself, like food wise, because I think that everyone who starts to get into nutrition or starts to think about getting into a healthier lifestyle is like, where do I start with my food? And that was kind of something that I struggled with just from the get-go, because I'm like, oh, if I can't eat, like you probably heard in the first episode, like I don't know what to eat, so I might as well not eat anything, because apparently everything's
Yeah.
bad for me.
Yeah.
And I think looking at your account on Instagram, and I'm just like, well, actually it's actually a lot more accessible than I thought it was. And
Yep.
yeah, definitely I think having like a nutritionist point of view and like knowing why each food is great and good for you
Yep.
has been really eye-opening, which is like,
Yeah.
again, why I'm really excited to have you on here.
Yeah.
So before I forget, just in case there's any new listeners about why I'm doing this, is that I've kind of struggled with my own body image and trying to navigate what nutrition and a healthy lifestyle really looks like for me. And I have, there was an incident with a doctor where she kind of just called me overweight. And I know that's like a whole BMI thing, and, something that is like just a thing that you have doctors use to measure. And,
Yep.
but like it really hit me hard for myself, because I've spent all my life trying to be like, oh no, my body's fine. It's just, the whole big is beautiful like movement and everything, which is like completely valid and, makes sense. But then it was like also, I had moments where I was just like, I want to crawl out of my skin and I don't want to be who I am. And I feel like that's just a testament to like really looking at yourself. And I guess this is what the podcast is like for me, to really look at myself and be like, am I actually happy with who I am, and and I guess ending this podcast with you with like getting like just actual facts of and like knowing the facts of myself as well, being like, yeah, I'm actually not quite happy with myself and I don't know what to do next. And
Mm.
I've talked to friends and they've been giving great advice, but I think it's different when it's like facts,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Understood.
Yeah. Um, so something I really want to ask you, because like we did talk about, you talked about being a sports athlete, and I just kind of want to know what kind of got you into it. And I know that you mentioned bodybuilding as well, that
Yeah,
you personally have done bodybuilding. Would you like to
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So before I even started my nutrition coaching business, the whole interest in, sports, fitness, and just nutrition, how that played a role in performance, really started in high school. So, just a bit of background, like I went to an all-girls high school in Western Sydney, and it's very like different, right? So for me, I was a person that was interested in sports and being a little bit more active during lunch and recess, as opposed to many of the other not colleagues, like other students in school that wanted to just sit and talk, kind of gossip, whatever. So I did feel a little bit out of place in a way, but it didn't really affect me mentally until probably senior high school, when all the girls started getting into makeup more and less about like sport and movement, and all like body image as well. So that's when I really started to take note of like, body image and like how it's been affecting some of their mental health, especially in your senior years, like, going out of high school as well. It's like an exciting chapter to end in your life. But going back to sports in like junior to senior high school, I was really interested in, competing in like different sports against other schools. It was like an exciting thing to do and get involved in. And it just, for me, it was like a sense of accomplishment. And I really thrived off that when being exposed to, different sports and then traveling and versing other schools and meeting other players as well and being challenged. So that was kind of the root of how it led me to post high school, and where I really got interested in taking like fitness more seriously. And so when I mean seriously, like I, decided to invest in a gym. And then at that time as well, my brother opened up his own gym. So I've been training there, bodybuilding style. And of course, with bodybuilding, it's tied back to physique, right? And your body image as well. So I was really obsessed with it. And obviously, being exposed to like the concept of like working on your image and body image in senior high school, like I was starting to get introduced into, oh, why do people fascinate over, trying to look better, and then the fact that I was doing that in like a fitness kind of perspective, that's where I got really obsessed with it. And so I was like, you know what, I want to really challenge myself again and I want to compete. And so I was around 18 to 19 at the time when I did my first bodybuilding show. And so I did a bikini bodybuilding show in October 2017. And the whole journey of it was not great. So I was very young, very naive. I had a lot of, interest in it. I was very curious, but, I wasn't logical about, the ins and outs and the trade-offs and like the whole roadmap towards doing a bodybuilding show, especially at such a young age where I was still developing my muscle maturity as well. So when I did the competition, the whole journey itself was very, very bad. The coach I didn't do much research on their previous, like experiences in working with clients. I kind of just knew them from a recommendation. So I just went with that. And, the whole journey was very restrictive. So I did tireless amounts of cardio because in a bodybuilding show, you have to be extremely lean. especially for a bikini category. So there's different categories. You've got bikini for women, fitness and sports model for women. Then you've got, physique, and then the actual bodybuilding category. So for bikini, it was very restrictive because you had to be really skinny in a way, very toned, kind of like an actual beach body. And so tireless amounts of cardio morning and night, very restrictive diet, pretty much ate like protein and veg at every single meal of the day, including breakfast. And it was just that for the 7 days straight. No rest days, just that repeat for like a total amount of 12 weeks. And so because I was so in the mindset that I wanted to challenge myself, I thought, okay, I think this is the expectations anyway. So this is really a challenge. But I was feeling very fatigued. I got injured a little bit a few weeks out because of the amount of cardio I was doing. I was feeling very, very mentally drained, and also was starting to feel like I was not good enough to even make it to stage. So, that whole mental battle and that experience really did shed a light into, like not being able to eat foods properly or looking to like, feeding myself properly for my performance. And it just really was a bad but good experience for me to learn because if I didn't go through that experience, I wouldn't have had that epiphany or that kind of realization afterwards where I was like, there's got to be more to it, like it can't just be this way. And even to this day, even though that was like almost 4 to 5 years ago, I still go through some body image issues, or even though I am a nutrition professional, I've cleaned up on my, literacy and knowledge, I still feel a little bit of trauma from that experience. And it's unfortunate that even with clients, they go through something like traumatic like that when when they're first introduced into cleaning up their health or their journey. And so that kind of inspired me to really go into this profession where it's like, whoever wants to start their journey, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a sustainable way. It can be evidence-based, well-researched, and of course, with a lot of support, because during my bodybuilding journey, I didn't get much support because we were practically like a group of us. So the time and attention to each athlete wasn't really divided evenly. And because I was really young and like this was my first time, my coach then was more focused on those who had worked with them for a while, who had experience, who had some sort of idea of like the roadmap. So that's kind of what inspired me to be in this profession today. And so now that I've had that background in like a competitive way with nutrition and fitness, like I want to be able to help athletes as well, from whatever background in their strength and conditioning sport, to really go through it the proper way. And even athletes as well, when they need to do like a competition where it's like a weight class, for example, they really restrict, 1 or 2 weeks out like their food, and that's not really sustainable. And it happens to them as well. So yeah, that's a bit of my story. Yeah.
That sounds great. One thing that I did want to ask you about, because you did touch on, because like one thing that it was always got me curious after we talked about bodybuilding is that kind of like why, because personally I don't think I could ever do bodybuilding. I don't think that I think it's because one, I'm not that like into sports and things like that. Like you sounded like you've had a very healthy like childhood, and then also like the aspect of like being a woman in society and like knowing the fact that we've been under a magnifying glass as women. And like how did you feel confident knowing all that stuff and going through your own body image issues, like you said, during high school, to a point to be like, no, actually I want to go on stage and show off my body? if that makes
Mm.
sense. Like, what
Yeah.
was like the mindset that kind of made you go, yeah, I think this is what I want to do?
Yeah. It's really funny because I still think about that today. Like I'm still like, what was I thinking? I was so young, and the only thing I could come up with was just like I really wanted to challenge myself. And like obviously when you're in a health and fitness journey, like there's different types of sport in fitness that you and like, that you talk about bodybuilding, weightlifting, powerlifting, there's all these different types, right? And so because I started with bodybuilding first, like, it's very much focused on just your image. And so for me to be able to be like, I'm going to show off like my ass to my family when they watch, and like I'm going to be wearing a bikini in front of my brother and my dad, like, I still don't even know what went through my mind, but I guess when we talked about the root of it throughout high school, I was not focused on my image a lot, especially from junior, so year 7 up until like year 11. I was like, I don't care what I look like. I don't even know how to do makeup. I don't even know why girls were going to Priceline after school just to buy makeup brushes. I was like, I don't even know any of that. Like, what the hell? um, and so when I was in a circle of friends that I happened to stick with throughout senior year, they were just really focused on, what's the new product that came out, and like, what should they wear to a party and all that stuff that happens in senior year of high school. And so that's when I really started to be like, oh, maybe I should take care of my image, or I should look into that. And because I was in an all girls school, that was constantly in my environment, but I never really paid attention to it until senior high school, and senior year, sorry. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I'm leaving high school with that kind of mentality and that kind of environment. And so when I left high school, I'm not in contact with those friends right now, but when I left it, and I was kind of like, all right, well, I'm in this new chapter now. I'm out of that joint. What do I do now? And that's what I left with. So when I got into bodybuilding, when my brother opened the gym, and I just saw the way people looked while they were working out, and I was like, oh, I want to look like that. I'm barely sweating, but I want to look like I'm fit. So bodybuilding, and that's when I got into it. And I guess like during the comp prep journey, I was like, this is something that I've actually put in the time and the effort to work on my physique. So the time I get to stage, it's like it's all been paid off in a way. So I think that's what the mindset and the confidence was based around.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that
So it's
answered that question.
yeah, it definitely does. So it was like a bit of a reward of like, you did all this hard work, and so here you go, you're on stage, and like,
Yeah,
look at you, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It was more of like a reward thing. And so if we backtrack a little bit back to my childhood, my brother was very academic, and he won a lot of awards from sport, from school as well. And so that was also my environment. And so that kind of set me up to think of ways where I can kind of reward myself and share my accomplishments. And I did place in my bodybuilding category, which was great, top 6, but I wasn't even that satisfied because I was just so drained, and I was so physically like tired. And on stage, I remember just wanting to get off straight away. And obviously, when you're on stage, you're smiling photos, you're posing. But I remember just being like, I am over this. I have not eaten. And, the whole concept of being like peak week as well in the lead up to your competition day, there are certain protocols that you do. So you do like a water cart, you do like sauna to sweat off more. And it was just very, very, very bad. I was also on diuretics because, they really wanted me to lean out. And then the night before the competition day, I had to drink like 2 shots of vodka to dry myself out, so that the next day, I I was just lean, I was dried out. So you can really understand that the experience I went through, especially with the coach then, and I'm hoping their practices have improved. It just was not sustainable. It was just not a thing I would recommend to anyone who's listening who is wanting to compete. Please do your research. And for me, because I am a sports nutritionist and I've done a course on bodybuilding contest prep, physique contest prep, I have a client who's competing in actually 2 weeks, and I've shared my story with her, and even for her, she's also questioning, like, how come we're not cutting calories? We're 2 weeks away, or like, I don't feel lean enough. And I've told her, like, well, this is why I'm here. This is why this is the method we're doing, because there's so many coaches currently in the industry who are still going the old school way. And so, even for her, even if she understands, evidence-based nutrition, she still thinks like that, right? And it's just, this is her first competition, but she already knows of the old school ways, because I shared my story, and she also has friends who are with other coaches who are like restricting them to like just 800 calories a day, whereas my client eats well above 1400 calories. And it's just, why why is that still happening? But
that's so true.
yeah, that was a bit of off topic, but yeah, that pretty much was the answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's one thing that does stick out to me when you're telling all the stories, is, if correct me if I'm wrong, I could just be really shady asking this question, but it does sound a little bit like disordered eating, or as some other people say, glamorized like eating disorders. So like, what is the main difference between a bodybuilding diet and like the whole, I guess, industry of it all, versus people who are like, like, this is just a glamorized eating disorder, or that this is like silly, because it's like, why would you purposely want to go out and show your body when you're like forcing that insecurity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope I answered this right, but the thing with the bodybuilding protocol and the diet, I think there needs to be the establishment at the very beginning of the expectations, the trade-offs that are about to happen, and just really solid foundation of the journey itself, which I didn't get at the beginning. For me, I was like, hey, I have the drive, I have passion, and I just want to challenge myself. And the coach was like, all right, let's go. But if a client was to if a new client was to be like, hey, I want to compete, I have drive, I have passion, and that's it, I wouldn't just be like, all right, let's go, let's give you a plan and you work on it. It's more like, all right, well, why is this so important to you? And like, what have you heard of, like, the experiences of some athletes? Have you heard of anything? Do you know the trade-offs? Do you know that being that lean on stage is not sustainable, and you're going to have to put on healthy amounts of weight back on, because your body, especially if you're a female, it's not designed to be very lean, and your body actually doesn't care if you have abs. Your body just wants to keep you alive. So people that have a lack of understanding on the physiology of themselves and the whole concept of a contest prep journey, I think that is the main difference, where it's like, there's not a whole price tag attached to, being able to be on this journey. And there's not a whole price tag attached to the body that you get on stage with, and that's for life. Do you know what I mean? Whereas an individual would just be like a whole big price attachment to, like, I need to look this way, because that's what everyone has said, but who's everyone, right? Like, hopefully that answered it. But yeah,
no,
that's the main
definitely,
difference. Like, yeah, someone would need to understand, like, the whole background of like a contest prep. They would need to know, like, a solid foundation of like, why is there certain protocols, what's the time that you need to invest in, the money as well, depending on the federation you're going into, and all these kind of like stuff. Whereas someone else just, really going through some kind of like mental struggle and relationship with food would just have a big price attachment to them as an individual and what they're worth. But someone in a bodybuilding comp would understand like the body that you get on stage does not have any worth to you at all for life. It's just one day of, really just showcasing what you've been working on over the past, year or something. And yeah, hopefully that has a big disparity there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think looking at it like as a price tag as well is probably a really good way to look at it, because for someone who does, like you said before, like has an eating disorder or has mental struggles within the relationship with food, is like, one day I'm going to be like this and it's going to stay like this. Like that's kind of the mentality that they have. Whereas a bodybuilder like is like, this is a journey, and like this is like the day of reward, but like it's just one day kind of thing. The kind of vibe.
Yeah.
For that, no, that's really interesting, because like bodybuilding has like always made me feel really weird, and I guess like it's really good to talk to you about it, because it's like my mentality is like, why would you do that? Like
no, I understand that. Like a lot of my family and friends are like, why can't you just do like a powerlifting comp, and that is more focused on your performance, and weightlifting, Olympic lifting, that's more on like your technique and performance, has nothing to do with much of your physique. And so it's something I went through, and it's something that I don't regret in a way. But if it weren't for that, I would not have this desire to be where I am in my profession. I wouldn't have built my business around flexibility and evidence-based nutrition. I wouldn't have this desire to be in the degree that I am. So I'm still studying for my master's in dietetics, but yeah, it's a long journey, and I love learning, and I love being able to work on my critical thinking as well. With nutrition, people think it's black and white, but it's actually a gray area if you think of it, as like a dimmer knob rather than a light switch. It's a dimmer knob, and the answer that I get, the questions that I get, and the answer that I give is always, it depends, right? So it's not like if someone asks, oh, how many calories should I eat if I were this person, like if I was a mom, or if I'm a new mom, or if I was like training X amount of times but I don't like this, or like I have no experience in tracking, I'd still be like, it depends, because what's the goal that you're working towards? It depends because what's your lifestyle like? It depends because what's your relationship with food like? So 9 times out of 10, the inquiries I get is, I want to work on my physique. But then when I take them on, when they finish their commitment with me, they're less focused on their physique, which is what I've always wanted to kind of make it happen during the journey of coaching. Less focus on your physique and more on how you feel. And I guess that kind of goes into some of the questions or some of the topics we'll be talking about later on in this episode, where if you are in a place of like, what should I do next? What should I eat first? Sometimes it's less about what you should be eating first, and it should be on like, how do you feel, overall, how, like, energy wise, how's your sleep quality, how's your stress management? Those are the most important things I look into, because they're kind of like the underdogs towards your journey in a health and fitness kind of journey, and how that impacts your progress. So it's very holistic with nutrition coaching, and I think with anyone in the industry, if you're a personal trainer, if you're a doctor, it should also be holistic. It shouldn't be this black and white thing where it's like, go on these pills, or like go see a dietitian, or like there could be more to that. you know, someone's stress management might be really out of whack, or someone might be, you know, not getting the good quality amount of sleep for hours, you know, so there's more to it as well.
Definitely. Sounds a little like you're a bit of like a little therapist for people when it comes to food.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really cool because it's like that's kind of like my relationship with food is
Mm,
like I obviously I want to eat better and it's like all this jazz, you know, all the cliches. But then my main focus is less like obviously physique is really important to me, but more emotional, more mental stuff.
mm,
Because like if anyone who knows me, I've gone through lots of therapy and all this jazz, so I
mm,
feel better in myself. But like it's just something that I've always had to keep in check just in case. And with having being told I'm overweight when I wasn't actually mentally ready to hear it, did a
mm,
couple damages on me. Like it made me do a whole podcast.
yeah. Mm,
um, and
mm,
it's just like um I I heard her and I was like, okay, I had my cry, had my moment, but then I had to be like, okay, what does this make me feel? What do I genuinely want to do next? And I think what I genuinely wanted to do next was talk about it and talk about it with
mm,
my
mm,
friends, and then also having a bit more control in my life. Because one
yep,
thing from learning in like a lot of therapy stuff is like having control of your life is so fulfilling. And I guess
yeah,
um I think like it kind of comes into like the bodybuilding kind of situation where it's like, you know, you have
yep,
control of your body, then you have your reward day. And it's just kind of like that's kind of what I want to feel in a sense, is like I want
mm,
to feel like I'm doing right by my body, and
yep,
that I um yeah, that I feel good in it essentially.
yeah.
But you know, I guess my question is that like just really broadly, what do I do? You know? Like where do I start? Um like
Mm.
what's the first step for me to really kickstart a journey of healthy living?
Yeah, I think like honestly, it's just asking yourself why. Like, well, why do I want to make this health and fitness journey? Or like, why do I want to kickstart this? You know, with let's say like every new client or like a potential client, when they hop on a discovery call, I ask them, well, you know, let's say they say, I want to lose weight. Okay. That's their goal, right? And then I ask them, okay, well, why do you want to lose weight? Oh, because I want to look good for myself. Okay. Well, why? And that's like, it just uncovers more to it. And so they end up saying, well, I want to feel confident in the gym, and I want to live life where I just don't attach a price tag to my worth, and I just feel good about myself, right?
Mm,
So you eventually get down to um, the root of it, you know. So for you, it's like, well, why do I want to kickstart this health and fitness journey? Well, why does this mean so much? You know, well, why today and why wasn't it a year ago? Or like,
mm,
you know, why now, right? So I think that's what I would say to you and to anyone else who's in a similar situation. Just really ask yourself why, plenty of times. And you might be shocked. You might just be like, well, you know, I have never felt like I could accomplish something before, and I feel like accomplishing something with my health is going to be really, you know, transforming for me. And then, well, why is that going to be transforming for you? Same thing, right? You're just going to keep understanding, well, why is it more than just I want to lose weight, or why is it more than I just want to feel fit, you know? So
yeah.
um that's what I would start off with. And then, you know, a lot of people think it's just strategy first, it's just a plan first. But, you
Yeah.
know, if you don't really uncover like the whole reason or the root of like, well, why do you want to do this? You know, because I could give you the most evidence-based plan on earth, and it's well researched. It has like, let's say 100% success rate. But, you know, if it's not transforming, or if it's not like you know, something very significant to you, it's going to be worthless. And in the same sense, if like your schedule is really busy, you know, you have a lot of other commitments going on, and I tell you to eat like 5 times a day or like exercise 3 times a week, and you just can't because of your lifestyle, it's going to be useless as well, because it's not in tune with your lifestyle. And I think a lot of people think like they need to change their lifestyle for this plan, whereas this plan or this protocol or this change needs to fit your lifestyle. So a lot of people think that they have to make these sacrifices before going into a health and fitness journey, whereas you don't even need to sacrifice at all. It's just really about habits, doing the small rocks before the big rocks, and then amounting that to, you know, a greater change. So I think, yeah, it has a lot of like mindset work before we start getting into strategy and a plan in place. But yeah, that's something I always ask like new clients or potential clients on their discovery calls with me. It's like, you know, like out of 10, how important is it to you? You know, why is it now? You know, 3 months ago, would you have said that it was the same kind of importance? Most often they say no. I'd say I'd give it a 3 out of 10 3 months ago, and then today I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Well, why? You know, there's a reason why you booked a call with me to discuss, you know, if we could work together. There's a reason why you also want to talk to me on this podcast. You know, so yeah.
No, that's really cool. I really appreciate that, you know? Like, I think with health journeys, it, like you said, like it's really holistic. Like, and I think with like a
Yeah.
physical health journey, it's like, okay, well, you really need to think about why, especially in the society that we live
Mm,
in the society that we've grown up in, with body image being like blasted into our face and like unhealthy living kind of things.
mm,
So it's I'm really glad to hear that you as a nutritionist is doing this and really asking your clients and your new clients like why, you know. And I think that's a
mm.
question that I think everyone should, like you said, should really ask themselves before, you know, hopping onto a healthy lifestyle, because I feel like that's a fine line between an eating
Yeah.
disorder or disordered eating, to like I'm actually trying to be healthy. Because I think that's
Yeah.
where my tug of war was just like, I want to
Mm,
be like, I was like, I want to be healthy, but then I just didn't eat. So
yeah.
it was just
Mm,
like, because I was like, I don't know where to start. And I think
yeah.
you're right in a sense that where you should start is asking why.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and like, you know, and I guess in a way, just answering the question of why for myself, um, is that I think that I I want to lose weight in the most broadest sense. But
Mm,
then asking why I want to lose weight is like, because I think for me, I grew up as a skinny girl and I've always been praised for being like a skinny girl, a little skinny Asian girl.
mm,
And then I no longer fit that mold anymore because of obviously
mm.
puberty, I've grown up, you know, I'm 20, I'm not 10.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
um, and it's just like, yeah, it's just been really interesting to think like, why do I care so much? You know, like, why
Mm,
do I care so much about being a skinny little Asian girl when in reality that
mm,
is not who I am, and I don't think I'll ever get to that point. You know,
mm,
especially if I decide to have kids one day, like that's not gonna happen.
mm,
Um,
mm.
so I guess going back to why I guess want to kickstart a healthy lifestyle is that I think I just want to take care of myself. I think is the bottom line, is that I want to take care of
Yeah.
myself. I don't want to, because like obviously like in like the Filipino episode with Milan, like we talked about how a lot of
Mm.
Filipinos all have diabetes or high blood pressure, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
like, you know, and that's the whole other thing. But like, you know, I just don't want to live that kind of life. I don't want to be
Mm,
in fear of diabetes. I don't want to be in fear of
yeah.
high blood pressure. Like, I want to be able to run around and not feel exhausted from just climbing upstairs, you know? Like,
Mm,
I
mm,
also I think it's just a bit of the control thing as well. Like, I think food is so underrated in like growth. Like something that I've noticed
Yeah.
between like high school and then like adulthood is making your own food, because like your parents kind of like
Yeah.
they'll make food for you, but like they kind of stop, and sometimes because you're an adult you don't like the food sometimes, and you're like, I just make
Yeah.
my own
Yeah.
food. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
where do I start? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so, and I think, yeah, grocery shopping, I think, is one of those unsaid like adult moments for a lot of people. It's just like, I can do my own
Mm-hmm.
groceries. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, and I think it's just like also looking at your trolley and being like, well, look at it, that it's not just all like, chip packets and shit. Like, I'm actually an
Yeah.
adult. I can make food.
Yeah. 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 No, I understand. Like, it's ultimately just having a solid control over your life. Like, when I talk to clients, I tell them, like, we're not doing this for me, right? We're doing it for you. And I think, when it comes to coaching, a lot of people think, oh, I feel like coaching is like, the coach just riding the bicycle and I'm kind of just beside them, whereas it's actually the client riding the bicycle and the coach is, coaching them through it.
Mm,
That, and again, like, it's very interesting how you mentioned, when you growing up, you were praised for being the skinny girl, and like, why was that such an importance to you? Why is that so meaningful to you? And your environment growing up really does play a part in, like, later life, where obviously when you're in your 20s and you're out of high school, you're trying to find meaning in life, you're trying to find your purpose, and you're navigating through life. And your childhood and your upbringing does play, a part in that. And so, like, if you grew up very, I'm not saying like overweight, but if you grew up, in a household where you had access to, like, foods that were, glamorous, and like there was no kind of restrictions with food, or a lack of, understanding of, like, fruits and vegetables, and then that
mm,
impacted your body growing up, and then later on in life you start understanding more about fitness, and um your why becomes, well, I don't want to grow up, I don't want my future kids to grow up in that environment where, they got bullied in high school and then it led them down this path, because that's very common as well for everyday people, not just athletes. It's like their childhood really does play a part in, why they made this sudden health and fitness change later on in life, and then that impacts their why today. Why? Because, I want to make my wife proud, or like, I want my future kids to, be healthy for the long term. And like you mentioned, like,
mm,
I grew up in a household, or like around relatives susceptible to diabetes, high cholesterol, all of that jazz. And you're like, I don't want that for myself or my future offspring. So
mm,
yeah, I just thought I would wanted to share that, because it's very interesting how, like, it has a lot to do with your upbringing. And even for me, like, my upbringing was, my brother was very academic and he had a lot of awards. He, had a high ATAR and all this stuff. And
mm.
for me, it's like, that's the expectation I have to go down. So whatever it was that would really challenge myself and reward myself, I will do it. So that's why I entered into a lot of team sports in high school, competed in a bodybuilding competition after high school. Um, it's very interesting. And so even if it's not, it has nothing to do with food or upbringing, like, your childhood and, growing up really does play some part in, like, your why and, your pursuits of things later down in life. So yeah, I just thought that
Mm.
was interesting.
No, definitely. Like, yeah. Like, I feel like looking back to your childhood is so underrated, and just being like, actually, why do I
Mm,
do the things that I do? Why do I think the things that I think? You
no.
know? Um, but yeah, no, like, I think it was really interesting for you to talk about, the environment that you grew up in, and like how food was dealt with. Like, if
Yeah.
you lived in a household where food was restricted, or like you had no restrictions on food, that kind of impacts like how you live your life and how you approach food. And like,
Mm,
for me, like, food was like kind of made for me, obviously as a child.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it was because my parents worked a lot, so like I barely saw them. So when the food
Mm.
was around, it was like quick food. Like obviously they'd like
Yeah.
make like a big pot of adobo or like sinigang and then just call it a
Mhm.
day and then be like, okay, this is your
Yeah.
lunch like for every day.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
or like fast food would be like always brought home.
Yeah.
And so it's like I grew up fine. Like I didn't have anything health wise that had to be flagged. My mom and my dad are a bit different stories of like health wise. Like I know my mom has like on my mom's side there's a history of diabetes, so that's why my parents are
Mm.
really like, we need to go to the doctors because you might be
Mm.
diabetic, you know.
Mm.
But that's not the case. I'm not diabetic.
Mm.
And um, but like it's because of that, the way that I approach food today is confused. Like I don't know where to start. I
Yeah.
don't know, you know, especially with my parents being like, oh, my kids are grown now. They can do their own thing. They can make their own food, which
Mm.
is true. I can do that and I have access to figure it out for myself. But it's like, if you don't, I didn't have a foundation of like,
Yeah.
to jump off, to be like, oh, okay,
Mm.
so I can make this for breakfast. I can make this for lunch. This is for dinner. It was more like a, here's a big pot of something, go throughout the whole day, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just like, I don't know how, I guess, my relationship with food is supposed to be, or
Yeah.
like how, I guess, like you said, like, how is it going to fit into my lifestyle? Um,
Mm.
and like, I think, yeah, what would your advice be? Just, I guess, based on my story. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that you so yeah, like I definitely feel like you've answered like, well, why do I want to do this? I think the next step is yeah, talking to someone. Obviously I'm here. But yeah, really talking to someone to really kind of analyze, all right, well, what's your lifestyle look? What does your lifestyle look like? It does seem like you are willing to make a better change with your relationship with food. Your um, what do you call it? It's not like your resistance to change. You're resisting to change, because there are some people that are like, oh, I want to work on this about my health, but like I have so many things going on, and like, when is the right time, right? For anyone. And,
Mm,
it is a risk when you make a investment into, let's say, coaching or any kind of financial investment into anything that you want to kind of do for yourself. So if we talk about like property and all that stuff, like that's also another investment. But there's also a risk in it where it's like, you know, for in this situation, it's like, well, will I actually go through with it? The risk of this is possibly like, um, my time and how much I can actually dedicate to this. Well, like with coaching, well, with my coaching in any way, it's not about like, how much you're willing to give time or like, how bad do you want it? I don't like that saying, but it's just more like, you know, habits, again, just habits of good nutrition, daily habits around your lifestyle. So your sleep hygiene is also something we look into, stress management, because they all kind of interrelate, right?
mm,
You can't change one thing about your health without it affecting the others, and that goes both in a positive and negative way. So if you change good things with your nutrition, for example, of course, that's going to impact on the quality of your sleep. That's going to impact on your stress management, your mood. That's going to impact on your relationship with food. And so, yeah, I think for you, it does seem like you are willing to understand. All right, well, this is my lifestyle, and this is where I'm at with my nutrition literacy. Definitely speaking to someone about it. You have me here, and I guess, that's where we can discuss and excuse me, collaborate together rather than excuse me, rather than like, me telling you what to do. Because yeah, coaching is meant to be a collaborative approach. It's not meant to be, a dictatorship kind of thing or transactional. Yeah.
mm. No, I really like that. I really like how you approach your coaching as well. I think it's really
Mhm.
refreshing and like makes it less confrontational. Like, I feel like a lot of people
Yeah.
don't want to seek a nutritionist because it's like, oh, now I have to actually talk to someone, and like you said, like it feels a
Mm,
little bit like a dictatorship, but it's not the way that it is
yeah.
for you.
No,
um
no.
and like, I guess my follow-up question is, say if I don't want a nutritionist and I want to do this on my own, and because I know my big brother, he was keto before keto was cool.
Mm.
And so like he was telling me about, like, years before keto became a thing, was like, oh, this, everyone's going to be on keto, everyone like in the past used to be keto, and it's like, so like he's the kind of a guy who has like a bunch of like evidence for it and stuff. So I was just like, that's
Mm.
cool, but I never got into it because I didn't really care about health at that time. um
Yeah.
but like now thinking of it, like, is going on a diet easier than going to a nutritionist, if that makes sense? Like, say like a keto diet, or like a
Mm.
going vegetarian or pescatarian, because like I know a lot of friends who actually decide to be like, oh, I'm going to be pescatarian because I want to just, I guess, have control of their food, or like, eat
Mm.
healthier, whatever that looks like for them. Like, what's your
Mm.
opinion on diets?
Well, the diets that you've named, typically they remove a food group, right? Um, and for me, in my coaching philosophy, um, we're very inclusive of all food groups. They have a role to play. Um, and even like your highly processed foods, they have a role to play, even in an athlete's like competitive journey, which comes as a shock to everyone, because they expect athletes to eat clean and all this jazz. But there are some benefits as to why some athletes eat pretzels on competition day, and we can go into another conversation on why. But if you plan to go on a diet and you notice that it removes the food group, so think, yeah, keto, low carb, no carb, pescatarian, vegetarian, all that stuff. It's about asking why. So if your reasoning is like, well, I just want to lose weight, there are other ways to losing weight that doesn't necessarily need you to actually remove a food group. And so, when you want to embark on a diet, I definitely think that it needs to be seen by a profession, just so that we make sure you're getting enough of the right nutrients, and enough of the nutrients that will support you and your energy on the day to day, especially for women. Like, typically women, number one, don't eat enough protein, and number two, they also don't take into account like their micronutrients. So think like iron, vitamin D, all that kind of stuff. And also because we have a hormonal system, so the menstrual cycle, we also need to make sure we support that with the right nutrition intervention in place. So making sure you're getting enough of the healthy fats, right? And so, typically we consume a little bit more of the saturated fats. And so we need to have, a great balance between your omega-6 and omega-3. So with that said, I would say, like, again, if, for example, you're going pescatarian because it's for environmental or ethical reasons, or you're going vegan and vegetarian for ethical reasons, that's fine. But if it's purely just for weight loss, or thinking that it's much healthier, and I think people deem it much healthier because you're getting in the variety of your plants, because you're eliminating some of the processed proteins, which I understand why it's deemed healthier to go vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. But I would always, talk to someone about it, because, you could be doing more damage to yourself than you think when trialing out a diet yourself, especially if you're coming from a background with a lack of knowledge. It's always best to see a professional to make sure that you're getting in the right nutrients to support you, your body's physiology, and your goals. And like I said, there's plenty of ways to go about weight loss, and it doesn't have to be you removing a food group. So all these diets that you've mentioned, typically they have removed a food group, and from an evidence-based background, there's just nothing bad with having, protein from animal sources here, or having dairy. If you can't tolerate lactose, obviously don't have or limit consumption on that. If you're sensitive to gluten, obviously limit or like don't have that as often as possible. If you have celiac disease, all this stuff. So there's also a lot of considerations that need to be looked at with a professional. So yeah, I would say if you're planning to change up your diet, definitely see someone, even if it's just for like a discovery call or one-off consult, like get someone's opinion on it, because yeah, you could be doing more damage to yourself than you might, intend to, without a profession. So
Well, that's actually really interesting. Yeah. And I think I think that's why my brother did like such extensive research into it, and and I've always thought about, going keto, or, because of my influences of my brother, he keeps saying, he keeps trying to push it onto my family as well. And that's cool and all, but I don't think it fits my lifestyle, and also I don't know about it. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think I will probably personally just deep dive a little bit more in diets, just to be like, what kind of works for me and things like that. And
yeah.
but yeah, that's really interesting. Just
Yeah.
uh, another question is, because I have a diabetes episode, and sugar has been a really big topic in my life, or in general, and I just wanted to know, how does sugar kind of come into diet? Because obviously you have your fruits and veg that have your natural sugars, indulging into a chocolate bar, or what's too much sugar, you know?
Mm, mm. It depends again. So, like I said, there's never a black and white answer to nutrition. It always just depends. Like for someone to say like what's too much sugar, for some, like having one Cadbury row of chocolate could be too much to someone, whereas another person would be like, that's like nothing, right? So it depends. To answer that question, how much sugar, it depends. In terms of sugar and its role in the body, like the reason why, if we're going into like sugar addiction and is that really a thing? It's not. Your brain has this reward system in place, and sugar happens to to put it simply, unlock that. So that's why when people indulge in, your highly processed foods, your takeaway foods, sugar, it brings that kind of like oomph feeling, like wow, that's so good, because your brain recognizes it as rewarding. And so that's where that whole kind of like, is sugar addiction really real? It has a lot to do with your brain and your nervous system as well. But its role in, like, let's say athletes, and for them on competition day, it has a beneficial role, because sugar, glucose, that eventually is a source of energy for athletes, especially in like your short term kind of events that will help them through their performance. So things like snake lollies that some of you might see or find like a bit of a shock, that some powerlifting athletes consume mid lifts. It's like, why are you eating like lollies? Shouldn't you be eating like broccoli or whatever? But it has its role, right? Because you need that instant carbohydrates to really support you on your performance, right? And that's our energy, and our body prefers our energy to come from carbohydrates. Whether you like it or not, carbohydrates are the main source of energy. Of course, your fats and your proteins have their role in energy. Protein is the last, fats are the first, but fats are second, but our energy for quick absorbing kind of activities, it's carbohydrates. And so, carbohydrates in the form of sugars. So from obviously your natural sugars from fruits, sugars from, your processed foods like chocolate and all that jazz. That's where they have their role to play in an athlete's kind of diet, right? When it comes to indulgences, there can be a lot of guilt and shame around, oh, I've overindulged, I've, ate like a whole packet or a whole bar of chocolate. It's all about like, well, why did I just do that? Do some people go towards sugar as like a comfort thing, right? Because again, sugar has that rewarding system or that feel good feeling to the brain. So naturally, if someone's like really down in the dumps, they're gonna pig out or eat out on sugar based items. But if you want to address that and you want to kind of work on that, it's like, all right, well, what other systems can I have aside from food that I turn to manage my emotional health? Does journaling help? Does exercise help? Does talking to a friend help? Does waiting, an extra 10 minutes to see if I really need the food to comfort me? It's all about building those systems in place. If you are struggling with an addiction to sugar or, turning to sugar for comfort eating or emotional eating, we have to build those systems in place. And that's where working with a coach 101 can really help the client. And so when trying to do it on your own, I mean, you can try and do it on your own, but sometimes it's a bit difficult. And so working with a coach 101 will help you to make other systems or solidify systems that you already have in place with you. So again, it's a collaborative approach with coaching. And so, yeah, I guess hopefully that touched on different areas when it comes to sugar, but essentially, with nutrition, it's less about, removing foods, but rather adding more. So, in Australia, only 7% roughly eat their recommended vegetables from the Australian dietary guidelines. And that's all of Australia. So that's pretty alarming. And, not everyone's diet is perfect. Life happens, Uber Eats was invented and, all the restaurants that are registered on Uber Eats, of course, the, fast food takeouts and, that's fine. Like food is meant to be, a social thing. That's how we socialize over food. It's a cultural thing too. So it's an experience, right? So I think, yeah, with anyone listening, like there has a lot of like work and relationship with your food. There's a lot of work to begin with a professional, just to kind of help you navigate your way around, food and what its role has in the body, food as fuel, food as a cultural experience, social kind of like thing. So yeah, it's very I could talk about it forever, but it's more than like, again, nutrition is more than just a black and white answer. It's just, yeah, it just depends.
Well, that's really great. So with the beginning of this episode, we chatted about your bodybuilding and your relationship with your own body and with food and, how it made you feel. So my question is that how do you feel about your body now? Knowing,
Yeah.
I guess, working with your clients, working in nutrition, really kickstarting this journey for yourself. How do you look at your body now?
Yeah, no, like, as I mentioned, even to this day, I still have some trauma from that experience. And, I have looked at photos once in a while, like, wow, I can't believe I was that lean. If I could do that, I could do it again. But I have come to terms with, my body looking different at different stages of my life. So a good example would be the COVID lockdown in Sydney. My body has changed, obviously, because of the decline in activity and access to the gym, and just being at home more during the lockdown because there was no other choice. And so obviously my fitness levels have declined a little bit ever since obviously that lockdown. And, I've actually been able to work on just accepting like, that's fine, like there's no one out there keeping tabs of what I look like at this month, at this year. Like there's really no one, right? Like the only person that's keeping tabs on that and the changes your body went through throughout life is yourself, right? But like we've discussed here, we have full control on our health. Even when I work with clients, I say, look, I can give you the plan and the strategy, but ultimately you have to execute it because you have the full control. It's your life. Like, I'm not living in your body. And so it's up to you. Results are just contingent on, the control and the execution you do with this plan, or not. And so I guess, yeah, looking at my body today, it's, like, I have my days, but I'm definitely come to the acceptance that being competition lean is not for life. It's not sustainable. And there are plenty of ways to go about your goals without having to remove food groups. And I'm just in a position now where I can testify to that and help people on that journey, and kind of help them understand, like, you don't have to sacrifice going to someone's birthday who's, like, let's say your best friend or your partner, and you have to bring your meal prep. Like, that doesn't need to happen. You can go to your sister-in-law's hen's party and still have fun, without having to bring your meal prep and all this, which I did, but it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, I think I'm even in a better place with being comfortable in my skin. I do have goals personally to work on my physique, and that's fine, but I know that it's not restrictive, because of what I've learned. I know that the journey that I went through has allowed me to be like, I don't need to go through that ever again, and I'm glad that was the last time. So yeah.
That's really great. It's really glad to hear that you've grown heaps from, I guess, from the beginning of your nutritionist journey, and what really sparked it till now. Um, and I think that, it's been really great having you on here, and I've learned so much just doing this. And I hope you
Yeah,
had fun too.
I had
um,
so much fun. I want to keep talking, but it will take a whole week.
no, I feel that too. I feel like this podcast is going for so long.
Mm,
But just again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us, the audience as well, to tell us about you and who you are and your work and why it's so important and inspiring. And obviously, with my own stuff, I feel a bit more confident just even having a chat with you. And I can't imagine what it'd be like if I was like you were actually my coach. And I feel like I would be very
yeah, yeah.
supported.
Hmm.
So with that being said, would you like to plug your Instagram or plug anything you'd like, while we're still here?
Yeah, of course. So if you want to learn more about me, my story, or just want to check out some of the free resources I give out on my Instagram and my coaching service options, you can search for me, NUTRISHAZ_coaching, and I'm sure Alyssa will put it in the description, or the show notes. And I also have my website, nutrishazcoaching.com. But other than that, thank you so much, Alyssa, for having me on here. I think what you've come up with has been really an eye-opening experience. It's a good conversation to have, and I'm very honored to be part of it. And yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone listening, who has gone through something similar or would like to go through a competition journey and would like support. So my DMs are open.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I guess that's the last episode of Are You Gonna Eat That? So anyone who's
Oh,
listening, thank you so much for listening. If you've only listened to this episode or listened to one or two or all of them, I really appreciate it. And everyone who sent me your kind words, I really appreciate that too. So again, just a final disclaimer. So with this podcast, obviously we've talked about really sensitive things. So if you finish this podcast and you're feeling a little triggered or a little unsure of yourself, or even know of someone who's dealing with eating disorders, please reach out, to Butterfly Foundation. And if you're in a crisis, please contact 000. But again, like, Butterfly Foundation is great resources. Even Shaz's stuff, NutriShaz, really check it out. Like I've mentioned in this episode, it's really helped me gain a lot of perspective on food and my own health. So without further ado, thank you everyone, and I guess we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
thank you.